Welcome to the Real Estate Equation Podcast. I'm Ian Mayer with I Am Home Inspections. I'm here with the lovely
Liz Bushman from the Bushman team.
Today we want to talk about the NAR settlement, particularly how to move forward from the NAR settlement. Right now, as we're filming, it's still been proposed. It has not been ratified, but we're assuming it is. So we're talking about how we're going to move forward. So we're going to start off with a couple special guests. Our first special guest is Keri White with Human Element Real Estate. Welcome, Keri. So let's get this started. How long have you been in real estate?
20 years, 19 years.
19. All right. So you've got some experience.
Mhm.
So assuming this NAR settlement becomes real, what do you think? What are you thinking, and what are you thinking with your business going forward?
Well, for us, we think it's a great thing. Having a listing, meeting a seller, going through the process, having an agreement signed is a great thing. So meeting a buyer, having a representation agreement signed, having that commitment to really show your value, I love it. I do think it is difficult. It's always been difficult with how buyers operate. They don't have to be loyal. They can work with multiple agents. It creates a lot of chaos and confusion. The buyer process isn't really explained the way the listing process is. So, this came, I think the reason behind the lawsuit is a different story. Like I don't really believe that. I think it was a money grab, but I tend to always give my information with facts and not opinions. And the point is you have a seller paying the entire fee. So it should be divided up. The issues are the headlines stating that commissions are gone, because that's not the case. But then also figuring out how sellers will now pay the buyer's agent, or will the buyer's agent pay the fee? We don't work in LA. We don't work a lot in the FHA VA market, but you can't have concessions. So FHA VA buyers may have a harder time if the seller's not willing to provide a direct payment to the agent. So right now, as real estate agents, we're making sure we understand the rules, the lawsuit, understanding that it's still pending, and being able to pivot and explain to our buyers and sellers exactly what's changed and how things work. I mean, most buyers and sellers, when they come to you to work with you, even if they've bought and sold before, they don't remember all the details and they don't know the process. So as agents, explaining how things, so I don't think that consumers will be impacted that much.
Right. Sorry.
Personally.
Glitch there, but are the housing prices really going to come down from this?
I don't think so. I mean, a commission, as much as some people think commissions are a lot, 2.5% in $1 million home is about $25,000. If it's 2.5 after taxes, office fees, and everything, a buyer buying $1 million home is usually not make it or break it over $25,000. They really aren't. When their down payments anywhere from $100 to $300, that's not the incremental value that we've seen in home price appreciation. I mean, it went up 20% a couple of years ago. So even at a 3% increase, that's still higher than the average commission. So I just don't see commissions being a big factor in how this works. The majority of agents are thinking that buyers will get hit with this the most because they're the ones up against high interest rates, high prices, and now they have to come up with a higher down payment or figure out something with their lender. So that's where, but I think for the most part, sellers are going to be like, okay, what's the process? What do I do? And they're not going to be like greedy or try to take advantage of it. I think people are just going to get used to it being a little different. Personally, and I just don't see home prices being affected. I think we need to be putting more policy into construction, building, the rules around what you can build, height restrictions, all that. Like we struggle a lot with, especially in LA, the amount of building that needs to happen in new construction that's not happening. So I think that's where a lot of our legislation should be going to, instead of chasing these commission set up around.
No, I agree there. So is there anything you're going to be doing differently in your business going forward? I mean, you're already a very successful agent. So
yeah, it's just a different conversation with the sellers and the buyers. Just making sure that they understand how the commission works and how it's paid. And we did that before, but now we will do it differently with buyers. It is an interesting concept. If you have a listing and a buyer calls you direct and wants to see it, you can't just meet them there. Now you have to say, okay, well, we need to have an agreement. And that's going to be a different conversation. because you have to show the house. So if this person's like, I don't want to sign anything and etc., sounds like a difficult person. But it's going to be a learning curve, I'm sure, but we just have to be prepared for how, when you meet with a buyer, how does the compensation discussion go? What does the paperwork look like? When you meet with a seller, same thing. When you're writing offers, if a seller's offering concession, if they're offering buy down, if whatever they're offering, you just figure out how to negotiate all these different aspects. So it's another tool in the toolbox, I think, and I think it's great. I think it'll create a lot of consistency, I think, with how buyers work. So I'm excited for it.
All right, thank you, Keri. Now for our next special guest, Max Stachowski, owner broker of Above and Beyond Real Estate. Welcome, Max. So, how long have you been in business? First,
6 years.
6 years. All right. So, with the NAR settlement announcement,
Yep.
we'll get your view on it and how you're going to move your business forward after this.
Well, I think it's whatever. It's obviously gonna be more paperwork. I think what someone explained it to me the best was that it is like the PED form. You're gonna have to explain to your buyers how commissions work, that there might be a possibility that they may have to pay a fee. But I think for the most part, it's not going to change much. It's just, like I said, going to be more disclosures that need to be done, letting clients know, educating your buyers how it works. And now buyer agreements are going to be like exclusive contracts for listings. So we'll have to either teach them you give them a buyer agreement that's non-exclusive, or you get them an exclusive one and just work around that. But I think everything's still going to stay the same. The way I've been looking at it is, if the last, I think, 30 or 40 years, we've had the seller pay the commissions. There's been FSBOs, there's been other people that lower the price than whatever the standard would be, or what people would expect the market standard to be for the area. But for the most part, I just feel like it's still going to be the same. It's just sellers are going to have to not disclose it on the MLS, but you can disclose on a flyer, disclose on an open house. So if that method hasn't changed for the last 30 years, I don't think it's going to change now, because most first-time buyers don't have enough money to even come up for 20% down. They could barely even have the minimum sometimes, and sometimes they need help with closing costs. So I don't know how you're going to be able to throw an extra agent fee, because most agents aren't going to do this for like $1,000, $60,000. It does take a lot of time. Your average home buyer probably takes 3 to 6 months, and in that time, you're spending time on the phone with them. You're showing them homes. You're driving. You're adding miles and time into them. So I feel like people are going to ask for some sort of fee, and if the buyer can't do it, then it's going to have to fall into the seller, because they're going to be the one getting a good chunk of equity. So I feel it's all going to still stay the same. It's just now you're going to have buyers be more exclusive to an agent, which may help buyers agents a lot more, because now you got them on a contract, and it's just going to guarantee you some sort of commission if something happens. But we'll have to negotiate some fees that will make someone feel comfortable, because if you tell a buyer, hey, if I don't get paid 2.5 from the seller, you got to pay it, that's going to scare him off. So I feel like it's going to have to be written in ways that buyers will feel comfortable signing with you, and then the seller is going to be able to pay you what you want. And in case he can't, there has to be some sort of compensation that your buyer can do. But I think for the most part, things are going to still stay the same.
Talked about contracts before, and you're good with contracts.
I mean, you should be. If your whole job's about contracts, you should be, you should be good with them. But yeah, I think now, I mean, you can still have a client show homes without giving them buyer agreement right away. You can always do that. You just have to, explain to them that if another eight, because I tell my agents all the time, if you think you're the only agent your clients are talking to, you're in for a surprise, because they're not. And you probably just either have to educate them, like, hey, if you don't want to sign anything with anyone yet, you have the choice. But if you do sign something exclusively, I can't help you.
Obviously, agents are going to have to bring more value to the client.
Yeah.
So how do we bring more value to the agent? And that's what we've been doing with, having a dedicated office staff, multiple inspectors, able to get out there right away, not delaying things. follow
But
up.
you guys also do good work too. That's the thing. That's why you guys are gonna stay busy because look, there's lawyers that charge like $6,000 retainer. People
Mm,
still pay it. Why do they pay it? Because they know they're worth every dollar.
mm,
And I feel that people like some home inspectors drop because they don't do enough work. Yeah, they will because they don't do a good job. But every time I've used you guys for reports, sure, the seller's never happy to see a 100-page report, like they're not. But like at the end of the day, our job is to disclose as much as we can for the client so they understand they're making a full choice. And they are going to trust the vendors I prefer to them because they feel they're going to do a good job. And I can only do that if I trust the home inspector and I trust you guys. So I feel like you guys are still going to be fine. Yeah, will you see a little bit of dip of agents, but as long as you keep doing those good jobs, the top agents will take you guys because at the end of the day, I don't want to go to court. You don't want to go to court. You just want to be. The more we disclose, the less in trouble we get, and that's just how it is. And there's no bad thing about that. The more you disclose, the more your buyer's informed. And if your buyer knows everything that's wrong with the property and they still move forward, then hey, they knew. Just keep doing what you're doing. I think it's great. I mean, you guys are pretty much my only home inspector because I know you guys do a good job.
All right. Well, thank you, Max. That was a very interesting perspective. And our third special guest, very long-time real estate agent, Charlotte Laws with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services California Properties. Welcome, Charlotte. How long have you been an agent?
35 years.
All right. So with this proposed NAR settlement, what's your initial reaction and how do you think you'll be handling your business going forward?
Well, I think it's a really disastrous situation for buyers, for sellers, and for buyer agents. And it puts the focus on money, which has actually been unethical ever since I became an agent. It was always where you don't talk about commission. That is not, you don't put that in the forefront because you don't want to blow the deal over it. So it was always like you put the client first. And that's what all of us did. I mean, I've always put the client first. I barely even look at the commission. I just kind of see it in the MLS, just put it in the back of my mind. I don't figure it out until the close of escrow because I think it's bad luck to do that. And, it's all focusing on the client. So we're not supposed to bring that into the mix. Now, all of a sudden, it's all about commission. It's completely changed. So now the buyer broker agreement, for example, because our company has had training on this, we have to write down every property with the commission amount. And every time we show a house, the client has to initial next to the commission. I mean, all of a sudden it's all about commission. So it's, that would be considered unethical before. So I think it's a real problem. And also, I've always been an agent, very full service. I mean, I really put a lot of attention on my clients, and I will preview before I show one property. So I'll go up and see 70 properties before I show the first one. I look for sale by owners. I look for people who are just in a neighborhood that my client wants, who might want to sell. Maybe they had their house on the market 5 years prior and then it never sold. And I contact them and I say, have somebody for this neighborhood. So I put a lot of effort in. Now, all of a sudden, I won't be able to even see if they're offering commission. It could be zero. It could be a flat fee of $1,000. I wouldn't want to show that because it's not fair for me to spend possibly a year and a half working for a buyer, 800 hours, hundreds of properties, writing offers on various properties, and then to be forced to show a property where I get zero commission. That's not even minimum wage. So now I have to contact the listing agent, say, what is your commission? Send me a form, signed saying you're going to pay that commission. I have to do all this up front. So it makes my job way harder. I also have to document every single time I talk to the client, every property I go to, because in the buyer broker agreement, I don't think it's even really going to be enforced. I think that a buyer could sign it away, and the brokerage, if the buyer decided they did not want to pay the agent and say the seller is not offering commission, I don't think the brokerages are going to go after the buyer because they're going to say that's bad PR. Sorry, we're sorry, little agent, that you spent 800 hours on this buyer. You spent, a year and a half with them. You wrote 10 offers that didn't get accepted because the buyer didn't want to go up in price. I know you were in escrow once and the buyer backed out due to the condition of the home. Too bad. You're not going to get paid. I think it's very, very bad. And it's going to up the prices for buyers, the market is either going to stay the same or go up. It's not going to make it more affordable. And the reason is because the commission is not baked into the price currently. It's irrelevant to the appraiser. It's irrelevant to the comparables. So when someone's buying a house, the commission, the escrow cost, the title cost, the lender fees, it has nothing to do with the appraisal. The appraiser is looking at comparables. And then what happens if the buyer agent brings an offer or wants to bring an offer and the seller is not offering commission, now all of a sudden that has to be tacked on. So now all of a sudden the price has to be raised above where it would have been before. And now the buyer has to pay additional money in order to purchase that property, which means it's going to be higher than the comps of the neighborhood, most likely. And then the reason why it still could close escrow is because today, the market, at least in Los Angeles, is very, very good. It's everything is multiple offers, 15 offers, etc. So what buyers have been doing for quite a while is removing their appraisal contingency. And they've been saying, okay, I'll just cover, if it doesn't appraise, I'll just pay the difference. So they'll remove that contingency, which means now you've got a higher comp in the neighborhood because you had to tack all that commission on top of it. And so the next neighbor who wants to sell goes, oh, well, they sold it for X, so I'm going to put it at this. And so then they get an offer. And again, if they're not offering commission to the buyer agent, that get tacked on. Oh, now the prices are even higher. So it's certainly not going to help affordability for buyers. And especially, buyers just don't have a lot of extra cash. I mean, that's my experience. The only ones who are going to be okay with paying a buyer agent are the investors. The flippers, they don't mind. They totally understand the value of an agent. They don't mind at all. But the other people are like barely making it to get their loan, to buy the property. And, it's hard for me to even envision any of my clients saying, oh, sure, no problem, I'll just pay the buyer agent, because I see what they're going through to try to get that loan and how hard it is for them to qualify for that loan.
So how are you going to be conducting yourself going forward? What changes are you making to your business?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna have to see if I can get a buyer to sign a buyer agreement. I mean, I've never asked anyone in my entire career. I've always worked on contingency. So I don't know how that's going to pan out. I don't want to have to change my model. I don't want to have to, reduce the amount of work that I do. I don't want to have to say to people, sorry, you find the house and I'm not going to help you find the house. You find the house and then I'll help you with the transaction. Or I don't want to have to do that because I really like helping people. That's why I came into this business. And it's very distressing to think that now I have to focus all on commission. I mean, it's something that it's hard for me to even envision myself doing that because, for example, I was a local politician here in Los Angeles and thought about, gee, I'd love to go to Sacramento and be an assembly person. But the problem is that I had to start fundraising. And I went through various courses for candidates and they said, that's the main thing. It's all about fundraising, which it wasn't when I had my little local position. You didn't have to do that. And I thought, well, I'm not interested in fundraising. I don't want it to be all about money. If that's what it's about, I can't be a politician. So that's going to be the question going forward. Can I continue to be a real estate agent? And I think that the goal for some reason, the goal with these class action attorneys, the DOJ, et cetera, I think is secretly to eliminate the buyer agent. I think that what's going to happen is a lot of buyers are just going to go to the listing agent. It's going to be a dual agency situation. And what happens with dual agency frequently is that somebody is disgruntled. The buyer thinks, oh, you favored the other side. You don't even like me. You're just all about the seller. And what happens is lawsuits. So sellers are going to get sued more. Companies are going to get sued. The whole thing is going to be a big mess. 8 states currently don't even allow dual agency. So I don't know what Florida and Texas and the states that don't allow it, I don't know what they're going to do. But I do believe in California that more buyers are not really going to see as much inventory because, as I said, I scour stuff. I look for the hot deals. I look for ways for people to make money. That's always been my forte, is kind of turning regular people into wealthy people, making them investors. Sure, they might love living in their house. It's a great house for them. But my focus is always like, how are we going to make you a ton of money off this property? How are you going to permit this room that's not permitted so that all of a sudden you have more square footage, or take out this wall or change this. And then when you sell it, you're going to make a huge windfall. That's kind of always been my focus. So I don't know if buyer agents are going to be around. I mean, I probably will focus more on listings. Yeah, I'll probably get more double-ended. I'm actually very good at being a dual agent and being impartial. I've never had complaints about it, but I have certainly heard that a lot of agents have trouble doing that in a way that seems impartial. So I just envision that the whole thing is going to be a mess. And, all these years I've been an agent, it started off more like buyer beware. I think that's kind of what we're going back to, is like, well, Mr. Buyer, we don't really care about you. Buyer beware, and I think that that's a bad idea. And I like the way the system has been fine-tuned over all these decades. I mean, it's like tweaks here and tweaks there. And this, it's like this finely oiled machine, which is good for buyers and good for sellers and good for agents and fair. And, everything is, transparent. And now all of a sudden, it's like these class action attorneys, the DOJ, they're just coming in with a wrecking ball and going, we don't really care what the ramifications are, just knock all this stuff down. And I'm just really mystified. I'm heartbroken. I just can't even believe they're tearing this entire structure apart when it works so well. And, honestly, I will take a lie detector test. I have never run into a seller who minds paying a buyer agent. And they're not really paying the buyer agent, by the way. They're paying the listing agent who pays the buyer agent. So this whole idea that the seller is paying actually is not really accurate. They're paying the listing agent, who then is kind of offering what you might call a referral fee to the buyer agent to bring the client. And when I sign listing agreements, I've never filled in the section that says how much is offered to the buyer agent. So I can always tweak it later if I want to. I can offer more commission if the property is not selling. I could say, I want to up it to whatever amount, and offer them more, and I'll take less. Or if my client, the seller, says, oh, I want you to put some expensive ads in these magazines, I'll be like, oh, now I've got to expend a whole lot more money that I wasn't counting on. So I'm going to offer a little bit less commission to the buyer agent. So I'm able to do that because I don't fill out that part of the form, and because the commission is coming from my company, not really from the seller.
All right. Thank you, Charlotte. That was a very different perspective, and we appreciate hearing all sides. Just before we get to your reactions, Liz, I got a note from a good friend of mine, dear friend of mine, who's a commercial real estate agent, who wanted to remind us that commercial real estate agents, we have no MLS. Most commercial brokers and practitioners are not affiliated with NAR or CAR, and we're always negotiating our own commissions. So that's from the commercial side. So, Liz,
I'd agree.
what are your feelings?
Well, being a licensed loan originator myself, I empathize with all of the realtors, active realtors in the room, so to speak. I empathize only because I've been in the business for 25 years. This May, 1999 is when I started. Lots of thank you. Round of applause. We have a sound effect. A lot of things have changed since then, and change is something that, as a mortgage affiliate or professional, has to deal with on a daily basis. Things change in credit policy. Things will change in disclosures. Sometimes it's even in processes. Things change. And as originators, we have to adapt very quickly. We're almost on our toes on a very given day, on any given day. And so I have a few tips, I could say, for those that are feeling fear of change. Fear of the unknown is why people, studies have shown that people are not so acceptable of change as what's it going to look like on the other end. So we have a lot of, right now, unknowns. But I have heard that CAR, NAR, they're coming out with new forms, new protections. And I think that's a good thing, so we don't end up in realtor jail, or in my world we call it lender jail. We have all these protections, and sometimes it's more disclosures, and sometimes it's more forms that we have to review. I want to introduce a very amazing book, #1 bestseller. and most of you have read it either in your career or if you have not, I go get it at your local bookstore or Audible. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson, MD. And Ian, you read it.
A long time ago.
Long time ago, but you have read it. And it's not a very long read. On Audible, it's an hour and a half compared to 7-8 hour books. It's not a Harry Potter book, but it is a short read that identifies on dealing with change and how we as human beings, I can not like change. It brings a uncomfortable taste in your mouth. Your throat starts swelling up. We start fearing it. We don't like it. We don't like change. Why change it? We have a good thing going. Personally, I've been going through an integration. My company was just purchased, so I'm actually going through changes in processes and everything that I didn't want to happen. So empathizing with change is something that I really am passionate about, especially right now. So if any of you know, Academy Mortgage was purchased by Guild Mortgage, great company based out of San Diego. I've moved with and I'm part of the integration. So we're working through systems and, I empathize with these characters. So let's recap. Who Moved My Cheese? There's 4 characters. There's Sniff and Scurry, which are the mice, and there are also Hem and Haw, which are the people. And to give you a synopsis of what the book is about, it's a brief tale of 2 mice and 2 humans who live in a maze and one day are faced with change. Someone moves their cheese. So reactions from quick adjustments to waiting for the situation to change by itself to suit their needs. The story is about adjusting attitudes towards change in life, especially at work. So Sniff and Scurry are the mice, who I'll give you a little synopsis. They're the reactors. They react very quickly. One day they realize that the cheese has been moved in their maze, and without thinking, pick it up and go try to find more cheese. Again, they're mice, so they're not overthinking it. They just realize the cheese is gone, and I'm going to go and find more cheese. Now, Hem and Haw are the people. And of course, what do people do? We tend to overanalyze. What if? It's scary. Fear of change. So Hem and Haw are pretty much the people and how we deal with change. Hem is the big cheese. He does not want to change at all. Haw eventually realizes that change is inevitable. So at first takes the step of, hey, you know what? I don't like this. But then realizes it's inevitable. If we don't move and look around for more cheese, we're going to starve. And all of our, basically, you can't live. So Haw eventually goes out back into the maze and starts looking for more cheese. It is a positive and uplifting story, if you remember. But do you remember if you identify with Sniff or Scurry or Hem or Haw?
That one, it was so long ago that I read it. I don't really quite remember the book, other than I do remember it was one of those books like when I worked in the wholesale mortgage company that like everybody had to read.
They forced it on you.
But I was also just thinking 7 Levels of Communication, another good book. And one of the stories in that book was how he had sold a house to his friends. And then he didn't keep in contact with them. And years later, he called them and he said, "How you going?" And they're like, "Oh, you wouldn't believe it. We just sold our house and bought a new house. Because you were right. We would outgrow this house after a while." And he's sitting there going, "Wait, you sold your house and bought a new one and didn't call me?" He doesn't say this to these people. That's what he's thinking. And part of it, in the story, it's about keeping in contact with your past clients. I think as it relates to this issue is that the clients did that not because they didn't think of him as an agent, because they don't understand how he gets paid.
Okay.
The perception is that if you're a real estate agent, it's just a job and you're paid by the hour like the guy at the grocery store. And so I think that's actually maybe a benefit of bringing the commission talk to the forefront is, what are the big things agents always complain about? No one realizes that we don't get paid until sell a house. And I've seen it a lot where, someone goes and says, happened on my very first inspection when I was a brand new home inspector 10 years ago. The lady had scheduled the inspection with an agent, and then she wasn't intending to write the offer with that agent. And of course, that agent got really mad. And the client was like, "Oh, I didn't know it made a difference." Because she didn't understand how commission structures worked. So not to get too far off your cheese book, but I think that's going to be one benefit of bringing this conversation forward is now people are going to actually start to realize, wait, real estate agents don't get paid by the hour. They don't get paid a salary. They only get paid if it closes. And that's going to, make people maybe think a little bit more about jumping from agent to agent. Because we see that all the time. On the inspection side, we'll get repeat clients who don't always come in with repeat agents. And I think the other interesting part, in our business, about 20 to 25% of all our clients do not tell us who their real estate agent is because they don't trust their agent. And we get another 3 to 5% that will tell us somewhere in the inspection process, I really don't like my agent. And I don't want to work with this person anymore, but we're too far into the deal to back out now. And I think now with these buyer-broker agreements, people are going to think to sign. Like, do I really want to sign and attach myself to this agent if I don't like them? Or if I have a friend that I want to use and intend to use, I'm not going to talk to these other agents and waste their time. I'm just going to go right to my friend because now there's going to be paperwork. So I do think there's going to be some added benefits to the buyer-broker agreements that are going to, benefit the agent in the end.
Gotcha. That makes me sad that people don't know who they're working with or end up working with maybe a person that doesn't reflect their personality or understand maybe their needs or wants. That kind of makes me sad. I'm going to react to that for a second. Because as a lender, I work directly with buyer's agents and their buyers, or sometimes it's my buyer and I refer them. And we are one big happy family through this 30-day or 21-day escrow, or 90-day shopping process, or a year if it goes that long. And so it kind of makes me sad when people go, oh, if they don't remember their loan originator, would be me, or they don't remember their great experience with their realtor. So I think there's a little work that needs to be done there, right?
Yeah.
How to develop trust and how to build a fan for life. But yeah, I mean, the point of change. This is going to be a huge. It already has impacted conversations on Facebook, discussions online, YouTube, everything. There's a lot of talk about it, and that's normal. That's a very normal reaction, and a lot of fear of, what's going to happen? How am I going to get paid? So without breaking it all down, I have been asked, again, as a lender, would commissions be considered a thing that we could finance into the loan? That's a great question. That's a great avenue. So I think a lot of people are already trying to decide, like, hey, what are our options? Instead of going, oh my God, sky is falling, doom and gloom, what are our options? And try to continue to deliver the same service without my buyer having to pay me if it's a particular house that offers 0 commissions. Right now, I mean, obviously commissions are laid out between the listing agent and the seller upon, listing agent contract. Am I right?
Yeah,
it's agreed upon before, contracts are signed. And the amount, and we can look at, it happens up to 6%, but here in California, I think the norm is closer to 4 or 5, depending upon price of home. Now, average price of home in LA County, starter home, what is it? 980,000. So, $1 million if we round up, that's that's a big chunk of change for a lot of sellers. But we have to look at the positive things, right? Things are going to change without happening. Technology changes, industry changes. We have to roll with it. And the point of the Who Moved My Cheese is to move with the cheese. When you can look back in hindsight after the change, hopefully there's things that you've learned. And in the book, they write them on the wall, and there's things that Ha learns as he goes through the mazes to hopefully teach others that change isn't so bad. Change is good, and sometimes we're forced with change. We don't realize we're in a comfort zone, and why change? If things are working, why change? But obviously, life moves forward in a direction, and things will change, and that's life. That's part of our career. Real estate is an ever-changing process, and it's stressful, and commissions are negotiated. But I will mention before we wrap up is that I too went through the SAFE Act of 2009, reminding Ian earlier that prior to 2009 SAFE Act, mortgage loan originators didn't have to be licensed, didn't have to be registered. We didn't have a number that followed us to every state and every company. And so transferring, it wasn't easy for a lot of people. That changed. SAFE Act made not only, it wasn't like, oh, here's your number. We had to test. We had to take 20 hours of education. You had to live scan and fingerprint and pass the federal background check. Not everybody could do those things. Eek. And loan originators, pulled some stats as of May 2022. No, it's a year and a half ago. There were 38,380 loan originators in California. 38,380. Now, realtors, as of January 2024, realtors in California were 204,678. So 204,678 licensed realtors in the state of California. Not everybody is going to see this as a positive change and continue in the business. I don't know how many of those are active versus full-time, part-time. We start looking at that. Statistics don't break it down. They just give us that big number. But that's a lot. 204,000. That's a lot. That's a lot. So I'm sure we'll probably see some shrink. Those numbers will probably go down because that's what happened with the SAFE Act with loan originators, is not everybody could pass the test. Not everybody wanted to go through the hoops of the federal regulators, and so they didn't. And only about, a little less than a half, about, a third made it through. Doing loans and managing an office at that time, I would say those numbers are pretty accurate. Only about a third continued on into the mortgage industry. The others left or decided not to do it. So I went, yay, that's more for me. You realtors, if you're listening, you go, yeah, that's more for you. Because it cut out all the people that weren't serious and passionate like I was.
And that is the key. You got to be serious and passionate. And if you're serious and passionate, a lot of agents I've spoken to off camera who are serious and passionate see this is really nothing more than a minor hiccup and plan to just continue going forward as usual. But it reminds me of a song by the band Fate's Warning called Leave the Past Behind. And just keep moving forward. So this is Ian with the Real Estate Equation. I'm with IM Home Inspections that matter for people who care. 818-298-3405.
And I'm Liz Bushman of the Bushman Team, branch manager with Guild Mortgage, formerly Academy Mortgage. And you can always reach me on my cell at 714-478-7920. If you want to know more about Guild Mortgage programs, you can go to my website, which is www.guildmortgage.com/Liz Bushman. Thanks for listening, and please share and make some comments.
Like and subscribe and let us know what you thought.